On today's episode of the 1% Podcast, we're excited to welcome Rick Hogaboam. Rick is a candidate for mayor for the city of Nampa in its upcoming election. He currently serves as the Canyon County Clerk. Rick's also a former chief of staff for the mayor in the city of Nampa, as well as a city councilman. So his extensive experience kind of makes him uniquely prepared for this position. We're excited to welcome him to the podcast and to talk to him about all the issues surrounding growth, the Ford Idaho Center, and other issues that are hot topics in Nampa and in this election cycle. So we're excited to have Rick join us on the podcast today.
When you bring people together who have a lot of different perspectives, hopefully the end product is better because of that. Yeah. So it's important to have that deliberation of bringing good, thoughtful people with different perspectives on city council or into the mayor's office so that we can powwow and then have public input and have high expectations.
Yep.
Have high expectations. I want to be reasonable. I don't want to have pie in the sky and then bankrupt the city, of course, with outrageous decisions. But I trust that if you go through a process that's deliberative and vetted and you solicit public input, that the end product is going to be a good product. We need to maintain public trust, and you have to show that we're good stewards with what's entrusted to us.
Today we are joined by Nampa mayor candidate and current Canyon County City Clerk, Rick Hogaboam. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, good to be here with you, Cam.
Yeah, this is fun. This has been one that we've been anticipating. I've been anticipating, looking forward to having you on the podcast. You're someone that I consider a friend and someone I'm supporting for public office. And so looking forward to hopefully having you elected and be the next mayor of Nampa. But we wanted to give you an opportunity to be able to come on the podcast and talk about your background and who you are as a person, but allow people to get to know you and some of your takes on some of the issues that are facing the city right now. And so grateful to have you here. Thanks for taking your time.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Good to be here. Thanks for what you do with the podcast. It's been a joy watching a lot of your guests come on the show, and it was great seeing Coach Danielson on the show and AD Jeremiah Dickey. Those were awesome guests, and just getting insight. But the Boise State cultures in the athletic program is amazing. And so I think you're the only podcast that I've heard. Maybe they've done interviews with other podcasts that I just search out.
Yeah,
for you to have two local leaders in our community come on. So one of the things I'm an aspiring leader, and I think leadership does not happen accidentally. It happens intentionally. And I think the whole premise of kind of your podcast and your platform is to really encourage people. We talk a lot about being the best version of yourself.
Yep.
Well, that comes with intentionality. It comes with discipline, and it comes from seeking out wisdom and insight from other people. And that requires humility to know that there's people who've maybe walked through the challenges that we've already walked through, and they have some nuggets to share with us. So a little bit about my background. I grew up in a pretty blue collar family. My parents actually weren't married when I was born. So I grew up in a sort of a, divided, not the typical two-parent household.
Yeah.
So, that did create a little bit of challenges. I lived with my mom for a while, then with my dad as a single dad, and he worked a swing shift. And so I kind of grew up quick as a young teenager. So I got into sports, and I'm thankful for sports and the role it played. I played baseball, basketball, football, was best at baseball. And growing up in kind of sunny Southern California, the weather was good to play year round.
Okay.
And just practice. So
where in Southern California?
Right. Yeah, I ended up graduating from El Segundo High School,
okay,
which is it's a small community it's tucked right below LAX. It's actually where the Los Angeles Lakers practice, the LA Kings practice, and actually the LA Chargers now have their practice. So El Segundo is an interesting community because it's on the coast. It has it fronts the beach, and you have LAX on the top, and there's an oil refinery that borders kind of the south, and then on the east side you have kind of aerospace industry and just kind of a zone that's a lot of big business. So it's kind of an interesting community. But grew up there, played baseball there. It was the high school. We were always playing in the shadows of George Brett, Hall of Famer. He graduated from El Segundo.
Oh, cool.
And what's amazing is he had a brother that was actually better at high school, Ken Brett, who played Major League Baseball for a while. He was a pitcher, lefty, and he also hit really well. but George Brett ended up
playing for the Royals
and becoming the Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And so George Brett was the one, and he'd be the first to say, from a leadership perspective and working hard, he was scrappy and worked hard. He got he punched above his weight when it came to just the discipline of hitting and contact. And so, I mean, George Brett got better as he progressed. And I think that's an encouraging sign that sometimes people are late bloomers.
Yeah.
You got to keep at it. Just don't throw in the towel. So, but sports was really important to me. And, so my mom's an immigrant from South Korea, and she went on to start her own business. She had kind of a hair salon, beauty salon. And then there was times when I would visit my mom, I would sweep hair and, just, how it is when there's clients, she's got clients and they're talking about everything under the sun. I'm just sitting there reading Sports Illustrated, waiting for them to be done and sweep their hair. But I spent a lot of Saturdays sweeping hair in my mom's hair salon, but I visualized and saw firsthand the importance of hard work from my immigrant mother. And, she came to this country because America is the greatest place to work hard and find success.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of my story. And I just highlight that to, sort of honor my mother and the hard work that I learned from her. My dad was a blue collar worker. He was a union guy, plumber. And so also learned the importance of hard work and the dignity of labor. And so I grew up in a home with both parents, even though they weren't married, both teaching me, work hard, study hard, and stay out of trouble. So, and so that was kind of my upbringing. And then kind of fast forward to today, I met my wife, Mimi, and we got married in 2002, and we spent a few years in New York, upstate New York, near Rochester, New York. And that's why I'm a big Bills fan. We talked about the Buffalo Bills, and this is their year, by the way.
I grew up as a Buffalo Bills fan, so yeah.
Talked about that. So, the community of Buffalo is just an amazing community. We didn't live in Buffalo, but, relatively close to Buffalo. Yeah. So you just fall in love with the Bills if you live in upstate New York, Western New York. And Western New York's very different than the city. Everyone just hears New York, your mind goes straight to skyscrapers and city. There's actually quite a bit of rural community. There's actually a lot of agricultural economy in New York. People are surprised by that. But we lived in what was an old Dutch dairy farm kind of community that was a rural community near Rochester, New York. I was an assistant pastor and coached baseball, was previously also a high school teacher and varsity baseball coach. And so that kind of began my journey of being concerned about others. So I think the one tie to public service today, and whether it was being a teacher, being a coach, going into pastoral ministry work, the focus is on serving other people and helping people grow and helping people, live the lives, that God intends for them. And so I think that there's this driving mission to make other people better, to see other people be better. And so I think we all have a calling to, as iron sharpens iron, we're to edify, build one another up. So I have this attitude and heart that I bring into public service, that is very similar. So we're blessed to have a family. I have a stepson who has special needs, Down syndrome. And so he lives with us. He's very special young man. And he loves the Buffalo Bills. He says this is their year. We look forward to every game together, and have been involved with a lot of special needs athletics as well, coaching Challenger Little League, doing the buddy walk, Special Olympics. It's great to live in a community that's really, really supportive of our athletes with special needs. And so it's really cool. So, and then I have a 21-year-old, and she's a mom. So that makes me a grandpa. Wow. It's crazy. I'm still grasping that. And then I have a 19-year-old, and she's a fitness nut. She's been running marathons this year. That's what she's gotten into. And then I have a 12-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter who's also getting into running half marathons because she's looking up to big sister. And then my 12-year-old son, he's a nerd. He loves to fly RC airplanes and drones, and he likes computers. And I don't know if you know, we have an RC flying field in Nampa.
I didn't know that.
You cut across sort of where Ridgecrest, the We9 courses. There's this road.
Yeah.
And then it used to be the old landfill back there, but there's a nice landing strip. And it's one of the premier RC flying fields in the whole area.
Okay.
And they have an amazing community of hobby enthusiasts.
So I guess I did know that was there. I didn't know that it was actually, technically called that, or that that's what it was intended for. But I do remember being a kid growing up golfing at Ridgecrest Golf Club and watching people fly RC airplanes right there. In fact, I remember seeing one guy lose control of one and it flew and stuck in the side of his truck, like right into the door.
So now you remember that. Sometimes the golfers, the RC folks try not to annoy the golfers, but usually they fly electric, but sometimes there's some gas powered ones. And they could be a little loud.
Yeah.
And they fly. So, there's protocol and etiquette. Don't go doing, Top Gun flyovers of the golfers, because the city of Nampa, the golfers are like, hey, these people are annoying. The city of Nampa actually allows the RC club to basically lease the space.
Gotcha.
They maintain it, and it's a good arrangement. And, and there's a lot of hobby enthusiasts there. So I ran for city council.
Yeah. What brought you guys out to Idaho? What brought you from New York to right here?
To Nampa in May of 2008, and it was initially to be a pastor of a church, and so came and did that work and embedded in the community, joined the editorial board, coached local recreational sports leagues, really got involved in the community. And it was really through that community engagement I was encouraged to run for city council. And that happened in 2017. And then back up a little bit before that, I was a nonprofit executive director of Lifeline Pregnancy Care Center, which is a resource ministry to help women who are going through an unplanned pregnancy, to support them with resources.
Yeah.
And it also led to what's called the Nesting Place, which is a transition home to help support, because there's a lot of women in an unplanned pregnancy who are not in a good housing situation. And so, our donors were very gracious and generous and said, we need to do something about this. So we started the Nesting Place. We bought it. I raised money for it as I exited that work. Ran for city council in Nampa, was honored to be elected and served for 2 years. And then there was an opportunity to step into the mayor's office as our chief of staff, and did that for 4 years. And then for the last 2 years, I've been at the county. So I know I kind of quickly flew through the last maybe 6 years of my public service life, but we'll get into that more.
Tell us about your role as the clerk of Canyon County, what some of those roles and responsibilities are, and how you feel like that's benefited you and helped shape your preparation, run for mayor now.
Yeah, great question. I joke the county clerk in Idaho is like the junk drawer that stuff just got piled into.
Yeah.
When you look at the evolution of just statute in Idaho. So when you look at a lot of other states, the job of the county clerk in Idaho is split up between 2 or 3 people in a lot of other states. So the primary role, it's a constitution office, is serving the judicial work that happens at the district court. So I supervise the administrative functions on all the deputized clerks. So the biggest, I have over 100 employees that I supervise. Most of them are in the court, and we have an interesting system where they are county employees deputized by the elected county clerk, but they're helping administer judicial functions under, and the judges are their own separate, distinct branch of government. So I have kind of this interesting division of labor, and we're supposed to, work together. So that's important that we work together. So the court administration is one part. I'm the chief budget officer, chief financial officer in statute. Of course, we're such the size, we hire staff. So I have an audit office, but all money flows through my office. So we're talking about a multiple $1 million budget, and every single penny has to be reconciled.
Yeah.
We have our auditors doing walkthroughs this week, and we're prepping for our next audit, and every penny that flows through the county has to be reconciled. So I'm the chief financial budget officer. I'm also the chief elections officer, and that's been scrutinized a lot over the last 6 years. Election integrity is something that a lot of people are really important about. So I have to make sure that our elections are administered in compliance with statute, but we have to recruit. I don't know if you know this, but when you vote on election day, I think people maybe have just hid it in plain sight. We got dozens and dozens of polling locations staffed by a team in each location. Those are not all full-time election employees.
Yeah, a lot of them volunteers.
Those are people who step up, and they're basically day laborers, but a lot of training has to go into that. So we are trusting our elections on the day of in all of our locations. You have to have hundreds of people that we train. Right now, we're going through the training for the upcoming elections.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are a few things. I oversee the recorder's office and everything from passports to marriage licenses to recording your deed. All the documents that need to be recorded. I'm the custodian of those records. We have a vault that goes back years and years with, documentation that's important for people. So yeah, those are the main.
It's a big role, though.
Yeah,
That's a big role,
it is
right?
a main role, and you need to be a good public administrator. And I think that as the mayor, the mayoral form of government in Nampa is a strong mayoral form of government.
Yeah.
There are some cities that have a city manager form of government where the mayor is more sort of the council president who presides over the meeting, but isn't actually a full-time mayor.
Yeah.
CEO. We have a form of government where the mayor in our city ordinance is the chief executive officer to help administer over, Nampa's got, I think, close to 800 employees. So there's importance in the day-to-day operations, whether it's reviewing contract, whether it's reconciling financial transactions, whether it's understanding how documentation moves through the business of the city, the day-to-day operational aspect of the city. That work, I think, being clerk, I would bring into the mayor's office a willingness and an interest to do sometimes that boring work of the boring but important work.
Yeah.
Making sure all the administrative activities of the city function well.
Yeah. Well, I think that, it's interesting as I get the opportunity to interview so many guests and to kind of see how their life's picture paints out, and you can see in the role that they're currently at, but all the things that prepared them to be where they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty apparent with you, with learning hard work from both of your parents in different roles, growing up and seeing different places. Even in, some people think that it's a bad thing for other people to be from somewhere not Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. Like, I value people based on their integrity and based on their empathy. And if people care about other people, and if they're honest and they do what they say they're going to do, and they align with the same values that, Idaho stands for, we want those kind of people here. And I think that, some people maybe misinformedly think that growth or having people come from anywhere else is a bad thing. I couldn't be further from that. And so I think that it adds diversity of view and adds actual strength to our community here, from having people with different backgrounds to be able to see different things and to see what has worked or hasn't worked different places. So from your experience in Southern California, living in upstate New York, and then eventually landing here, serving other people in a ministry type of setting, serving on a city council, and then chief of staff for the mayor, being, intimately involved in that role. And then in the county, I think this provides a really unique background that you have that makes you uniquely qualified for this role. And you can kind of see that picture painted out overall of this experience.
Yeah, I think well said. I appreciate what you said about, I think people bringing different perspectives and backgrounds to our community. I think there's concern that you need to assimilate people well into the community. A community has a pre-existing culture. And I think there's always this anxiety that if too many people come in too quickly and they don't respect the culture of the community, that you might lose the charm and what makes us unique.
Yeah.
And when we talk about growth, that is one of the challenging dynamics. But one of the upsides, if growth is managed well, there's a reason why people are coming here. It's not because they hate this place.
Yep.
So there's already kind of this buy-in that people are coming in because they respect, for the most part, what the prevailing culture is, and the kind of the cultural moray and the social fabric of the community, and people are wanting to embed themselves in that, much like I did when I moved here in 2008, almost 18 years ago. But people bring in perspectives, and I think it helps add to the thought capital, the collective thought capital of the community when you have people with different perspectives. If you get very siloed for a very long time, well, it's great to have, like a lifer who's doing one thing forever. They don't have another perspective on things. Yeah. So they have to pretty much trust that there's a better way to do things because they've not had to be forced to experience change or observe differences. When you bring people together who have a lot of different perspectives, hopefully the end product is better because of that. Yeah. So it's important to have that deliberation of bringing good, thoughtful people with different perspectives on city council or into the mayor's office so that we can powwow and then have public input. I think the testimony the public testimony at City of Nampa, it's amazing to see people come from such incredibly accomplished backgrounds, whether it's in the financial sector or the business sector, um, and come in and bring thoughtful contribution to the deliberation that goes on at the city. And that's a blessing. It's a blessing to have so many skilled, competent, qualified people who care enough about the community to share their thoughts and ideas with the interest and the desire to see the community do well.
Yeah.
So we need to harness all of that and make sure that it gets channeled in the right direction so that our decision making reflects the collective wisdom of our community.
No, I agree with that completely. I think that's very well said. You know, as being someone that has grown up here, right? My family's been in Nampa for over 100 years. I grew up here, but I've lived in 3 different states. I've been educated in other states. I've traveled extensively and, you know, have been a lot of different places and seen other things. So I think that, you know, similarly, I have a unique perspective of someone that grew up here, whose family's been here for a long time, but I've also seen and experienced enough other things that I do see the wisdom in, you know, why Idaho is so great and why people are wanting to come here and putting things in place to help preserve that, right? Like growth is not a negative thing. Like growth is a very positive thing, but it also has to be managed. So I guess let's talk about that as we're going to talk about some of the topics surrounding that I think that most people are concerned about or, you know, sort of platform issues around this election. You know, none bigger than growth. So let's talk about that for a minute and your perspective on growth. Nampa is growing rapidly, one of the fastest growing cities, not only in the state, but one of the fastest growing cities in America. There's a lot of people that are wanting to move here. A lot of people that are wanting to move to the Treasure Valley in particular. What would you say are the reasons why people should consider moving to Nampa or why anyone would want to live in Nampa? And then what your take is and a stance you would have on how we manage growth with that.
Yeah, great question. I think that first one, why people should move here or want to live here. I think there's several things. The values of our community. I'm a conservative. I, you know, I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to admit that.
Yeah.
I think in order to have transparency in government, it's important for people to just be clear about where they're at.
Yep. What your principles and values are.
Yeah. So I'm a conservative. Now, of course, I'm seeking to be mayor, and I realize not everybody is conservative in our community, but I think most people realize that our community, our city, for the most part, is a conservative community.
And when you say that you're conservative, Rick, like what are those values maybe specifically that you most align with?
God, family, country, in that order. And I'm quoting Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
You know, as a way of honoring him. It's one of the things that kind of Charlie Kirk had a lot to say about a lot of things, but the one thing that's kind of sticking in my mind as I reflect on Charlie Kirk's legacy is God, family, country, in that order. And in Nampa, I think people move to Nampa. They should move to Nampa because it is a community of faith. And, you know, sometimes when we talk about faith, I know some people might have very negative experiences in the church or whatnot. And I'm certainly not trying to wield faith as a sword, right? As an authoritarian sort of sword to impose on people. So I understand when we talk about faith, for some people, it might be sort of this oppressive conversation. It's a controversial topic that we're kind of taught to avoid. Don't talk about God and politics. But I think it's important that we acknowledge the fact that Nampa is a community rooted in faith, and it's not a bad thing, because when I talk about faith, predominantly, and I'm a Christian, we're talking about holding moral convictions.
Yes.
One aspect, but I think there's another aspect that sometimes gets missed, and that's to love and care about our neighbors and to love others as Christ has loved us. And so we need to be people of generosity and love. So when we talk about being a community of faith, the nonprofit charitable impulse of the people in Nampa is incredible. And having been in that space as a nonprofit director, whenever there's a need in the community, the community rallies together. Like it's one of the most generous, loving communities. And sometimes when we talk about faith, all we think about is, you know, angry religious zealots who want to impose their morality on everyone else. And I think what fails to sometimes get highlighted is the incredible work of generosity that's occurring from people with faith to open up their wallets, their cupboards, you know,
their time,
their time to help build up and to serve the needs in our community. So And also, I think it's important when we keep God first, when I talk about our conservative values, when God is first in our perspective, then everything else aligns better. But when we put something above God, what we end up doing is we end up actually making an idol of whatever that thing is, and it has a deteriorating.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that makes the United States unique is that we believe that we are endowed by our Maker with, inalienable rights,
Yes.
namely the right of pursuing happiness,
Yeah.
and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I think that is what this country was founded on.
Yes.
And to deny that is to deny reality.
Yes.
And,
Well
the United States was founded on those beliefs and those principles. And Nampa is a community that has embodied that for a very, very long time. And I think it's important that people understand that it's important to have leaders that believe in and value those same things that the overwhelming majority of the people that live here, I believe, hold true and value.
Absolutely. And with respect to the people who I realize I'm going to be mayor of people who might not share my values. And what I tell them is, my faith isn't something you should be afraid of. It actually, my faith teaches me to treat you with respect and dignity. And greater love is to give your life on behalf of another. So, I mean, kind of the social vision that guides my public service is to, be humble and to serve others, even people who disagree with me.
Yeah.
Jesus teaches a pretty radical, love your enemies, pray for those who hate you, bless those who persecute you. So it's not just treat the people well that I like. It's we're taught to treat everyone with respect. So I know that was kind of a long elaboration on answer the question about us being a conservative community, but I think that's an important component. As you brought up, our founding fathers, our Constitution, it's Civics 101 to, kind of sync those things with a belief in something higher than ourselves. Because if something's not above government, then government ends up filling that space. So when you look through human history, when God isn't at the top, then government puts themselves at the top. And you have tyranny, you have communism, you want to talk about true oppression, forms of government that say there is nothing higher than me. It is sort of the deification of the leader with this messianic consciousness of feeling that the leader can impose all the rules on the people, and the people are nothing more than subjects, and their rights come from me if I give them to you and grant them to you. And the American experiment's amazing in that we say, no, these rights don't come from the person who's elected in office. These rights are rooted in nature.
Yep.
They already pre-exist the political order. We form our political order with an understanding that these rights already exist within the people. So that's an important aspect of our community, and also the institution of family. We're a community of families. So I think it's important for us to talk about the importance of the family unit. We're just not a community of a bunch of, individuals living in an autonomous existence.
Yes.
When we talk about homes, each home generally is housing a family.
Yep.
So when we talk about a city is almost sort of a big family of families.
Yep.
And so I think it's really important that we just don't talk about each individual citizen. Well, that there's certainly a component where each person individually has rights that we need to think about. We're a community of families. And so what do families long for? They want to live in a safe community. They want to make sure that, when they turn their water on, clean water is coming through. They want to make sure when they flush the toilet that stuff goes where it's supposed to go safely.
When their kids go to school, they can get there safely, that the teachers that are teaching them in school believe the same things that they believe and, are not trying to radicalize their kids. Yeah.
Yes. I think, we care deeply about the education of our kids, and we happen to homeschool, but I want, whether it's the Nampa School District, Valley View School District, whether it's the charter schools who have waiting lists in our community, whether it's Nampa Christian, Zion Lutheran, a lot of, the private schools that are kind of in this space. And there's a lot of homeschool co-ops. And so all this tells me is that there's parents who are deeply committed to the success of their kids and the education of their kids. And so we're a community that needs to do everything in our power to make sure that our kids have a good shot at learning well in a healthy, safe environment. Sports is another big part of my platform, because why should people want to move to Nampa? I want us to have the best athletic facilities. I know that's maybe a bold goal, but hey, aim high.
I think it's a great goal.
Aim high. I want Nampa to be known as I want us to be the place of champions in athletics. I want us to have champions every single year in our high schools across all the disciplines of all the sports.
Yeah.
And kids, of course, don't get there overnight.
Yeah.
So they need to start young, and we need to have facilities, opportunities, coaches that are encouraged to invest in our kids and to have kids. And maybe I'm biased because I played sports as a kid, but I think, most of my leadership probably happened between the chalk lines on the baseball field with the coach in the dugout who would tell me to rein in my anger, control your temper. If you don't do these things, it's not only are you going to get kicked out by the umpire, you're not going to do well in life.
Sure.
Rick.
And your team needs you, right? Next at bat, next play, right? Learn how to do things, learn how to play when you're hurt, learn how to get up early and be places, learn how to prepare.
Selfishness, actually. It's a form of selfishness to lack the self-discipline to just act out this way, because you're going to harm your team, you're going to harm yourself. No one wins. And so I think some of those lessons are most powerfully learned on the sports field, whether it's the soccer field, the basketball court, baseball field, the football field. Yeah. Even my daughter's wanting to run long distance, just the discipline that's required and all that. But I want us to be a community where we value this. So I want our parks to be clean. I want our parks to be administered well so that all of our leagues, whether it's club leagues as well as Parks and Rec League, and that's important to balance those things because, of course, you have uber competitive club teams.
Yeah.
And you're involved.
Yeah.
In that.
I own one.
That
yeah.
space. And then you got kids that are kind of starting out, right? They're not quite here yet, and it's more an introductory to the sport, and it's important that we make sure that there's access for all of the above, and we can manage that.
Yep.
But we need to make sure that we have safe streets, safe neighborhoods, clean water, deal with traffic, and make sure that I want our parks to be amazing. I want us to connect our pathways better, to do pathway expansion and connectivity. The number one exercise of people in Nampa is walking. They like to walk their dog, whether you're young, old. And so we need to have good pathways and sidewalks that enhance that experience of walking or jogging.
Yeah.
With good scenery and, have the aesthetics built in. So we have a lot of potential, and there's a lot going on that's good, and there's a lot of potential in the future, but those are so when I talk about being a conservative, God, family, and then civic responsibility or government, the government's kind of at third, and whatever that looks like. And so that's taking an interest and being involved. And whether it's a civic club, whether it's the Kiwanis Club, whether it's some sort of civic organization, I encourage, Nampa, again, is very generous in that regard. And then make sure we have good governance and hold us accountable. When you have strong families and successful people, the expectation level should be higher from us.
Yeah.
And so the more successful our community is, I think you're going to have this relationship of accountability with the leaders who serve, because the expectations are high, and they should be high. We're not just going to settle the bigotry of low expectations. Then we can be complacent and just accept mediocrity. And that's that, as mayor, I'm not running on a platform of let's just do status quo mediocrity. We're going to aim high. If we miss, at least we aimed high. And so I want to inspire the people in our community to believe that we could be the best community.
Yep.
Well,
and I believe that wholeheartedly, and that's why I live in Nampa, right? Like, I grew up here, my family's been here for a long time, and I feel this internal pull, this calling, I guess, from God in a way, that I'm here to help other people and to help make the community an even better place. And so, like, for example, you talked about youth sports, and I believe the same thing, right? Like, I learned so many lessons about life, about leadership, about doing difficult things, being a great teammate, like all those things that you learn from sports. I learned those things. And so I feel a need to want to give back. So, for example, like my youth football club, Warriors Football Club, we make it possible for any kid that wants to join to make the team, that we work with the families financially to make it so that any kid can play. Well, and that is, in some cases, they pay nothing. In some cases, their parents work as volunteers or help in different ways. Some people, we have payment programs or other ways that they can earn scholarships to be able to be in the program. But it's the same thing. Like, I've watched so many kids go get put on a bad team with maybe well-intended but bad coaches, and they have a bad experience. They go lose every game 50-0, and then they hang it up and they never want to play anymore.
Yeah.
And for too many of our kids, that was the result. And so I didn't want to see that happen. And you saw one of the signs we have out on the wall out here says that true leaders don't create more followers, they create more leaders. And I think that Jesus is the perfect example of that, that he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, right? He didn't want to be the king of a bunch of peasants and serfs. His intent was to make everyone a king, to make everyone a lord, to make everyone the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. And I think that that is one of the roles of a true leader, is that you should want to welcome and help other people come to their best, right? I don't want to see any kid that sees their future as, okay, this is the best job I can ever have because this is the job that I saw one of my parents work. That I want to help inspire and teach all these kids that they can be whatever they want to be, and that through hard work, through discipline, through, efforts to take advantage of opportunities, surrounding themselves with good people, and putting in that effort, that they can go anywhere they want to go and become anything they want to become. I genuinely believe that. And so it's something that I try and instill in all the kids that I coach. And I'm grateful. As I was looking back a couple nights ago, we were kind of reviewing, and I think that to date, I've coached over 500 kids in the time that I've been volunteering in youth sports. And I hope that I've made an impact on every one of their lives for positive and helped inspire them to want to be better. But I think that role as a leader, like, that falls on you to voluntarily take upon yourself this obligation to say, I am going to help make other people better. I'm going to inspire the people around me or the people that I'm serving to help them to be the best version of themselves. And so in a role, such as mayor, there's a lot of different ways that can happen, but it sounds like that's obviously very high on your priority list as well.
Yeah, and that's awesome. 500 kids, man. And those kids, I remember my coaches, and not all coaches were equally good.
Yeah.
But the good coaches stick out. And so hopefully, the impact that you're leaving on these kids, a lot of these kids are going to remember you the rest of their lives. They're going to remember those experiences on the field and the huddles.
Yeah.
The, hands on the shoulders, look at me in the eyes, and trying to build up these young men, to know what it means to mature and to complete a mission and to feel that sense of responsibility. And it's such an important lesson. So, but yeah, I appreciate your work in that realm.
So we're talking a little bit about growth, and we kind of got talking on this. So I'm a firm believer. You've heard me say this before, and I will continue to beat this drum as long as I'm around, that I believe that communities, the most valuable currency any community can have is families, right?
Yes.
Quality families.
Yes.
And that's what we're competing for, right? And some people don't look at it as a competition, but the reality is that it is. And you want to have good people that want to live in your community. So part of the reason I ask you about, okay, why would someone want to live in Nampa, right? And I think there's differing opinions of why different people want to live in certain areas. And some communities have done a great job of identifying and building their community around a mission and what they wanted their community to be. In being honest, I don't believe that Nampa's done a very good job with that for a number of years. And I think that, current and past administrations have done a poor job of communicating that and of really setting a vision of what that would look like. Under your administration as the newly elected mayor, what would that look like for you, and what sort of efforts, would you make and would the city make to help attract families to want to come live in Nampa?
Yeah, we can certainly aim high. As I said earlier, we have great potential, and what that looks like, I've alluded a little bit to it. We can onboard more parks and stuff. It's inspiring the community to see the value in taking the assets in our community and utilizing them to their highest potential. And so, a lot of that work, honestly, I think my role as mayor is to kind of use the bully pulpit to some degree to try to inspire people like you and others to fill that space.
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing I'll say as mayor is I'll be humble enough to acknowledge that there's certain things, that there's limitations on what the mayor can do. One, the mayor can let people know this is where we want to go, and I'm going to be a cheerleader on the side and do everything I can to encourage, honor, even if it means me, I have a bunch of crazy ideas that, maybe it's throwing like doing a golf appreciation luncheon and try to get sponsors for all the coaches in our community. as ways to incentivize and encourage and let people.
Oh, that's crazy at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and it might seem like a non-serious gimmick, and really what I'm acknowledging is the mayor from the public policy, make sure the streets are good, public safety is good, make sure our parks are clean. But what inspires the activity?
Yeah.
It's really, strong homes, strong families, like you said. And so I will do everything in my power to try to encourage and inspire that, to be on the front lines. I hope to maybe even try to coach if I have time. Again, one of my friends, Ron Duran, he's the commissioner for Babe Ruth, Nampa Babe Ruth. And I know a couple of years ago, he's like, Rick, we got this waiting list of kids, but we're short. We need like 2 to 3 coaches, or we're going to have to tell these kids they can't play. I'm like, dude, I can't right now. I'm so busy, but I'll pray that it works out. But like that tug on the heart to know that there might be 20, 30 kids turned away because of a lack of coaches. So if mayor's a busy job, but if I can skip away a few days a week in the afternoon and even try to coach, but try to lead by example without forsaking or compromising.
For sure. Well,
elected to, but also lead and try to show like, hey, this is really important. If people are like, why are you being frivolous with your time? It's like, no, this is important. I'm trying to inspire people to see the importance of this. Like if the community buys in, and everyone pitches in, like that's where the potential of our community is.
For sure.
It's Cam Wheeler. It's going down the list of everyone pitching in their part. And what our community could be. So it's really to try to inspire people to believe higher and better, not just be complacent and just retreat.
Well, and like, for example, I didn't intend to even talk about this, but like with my program, right, we pay our coaches to be in our program. Because we want to have the best quality coaches. So, for example, like Tyler Crow just graduated from Boise State, football player, scored the first touchdown Fiesta Bowl last year, is one of our coaches in our program.
That's awesome.
We pay Tyler to be in our program. Why? Because we feel like Tyler has those principles, values, got to play for a high quality program like Boise State, has great experience that he could come bring and could come teach young kids in our community to be able to like help them get to the next level and help them develop and become better. We do those kinds of things because we feel like it's a benefit to the community. And when you recruit high quality people and people that want to be part of the community, those sorts of things are just things that are priorities to them, right? Like we have a number of our coaches are dads that volunteer because they want to help give back, right? They want to be part of it. And so, I know I sound maybe like a broken record a little bit, but I'm just, such a believer that through policy and through communities making decisions that attract high quality people, virtually all of your other problems take care of themselves, right? Our crime takes care of itself, right? Our issues in schools take care of themselves, right? Like a lot of these things that we think are issues dissolve when we're working on and helping create the best culture for families and attracting people to come want to live in our community. So now we talk about, okay, well, what are ways we can do that? And I think that investing in parks, infrastructure, roadways, making smart and prudent decisions. I'll share, one experience that I had a number of years ago. I own several different businesses, and in one of my businesses, we were looking at needing to buy new phones for one of our locations. We had a phone company come in and make a presentation to us. They shared with us that they had recently sold a similar product to the city of Nampa for the Hugh Nichols Public Safety Building. And there were several different options of what they had. One of the options was $1,000 phone that had like a little FaceTiming type feature on it. This is before FaceTime really existed. Had a FaceTiming feature on it so that people between offices could be able to talk to each other and to be able to see one another. Seemed to be a pretty irrelevant feature. We opted to have a simplified version that cost approximately $100 per phone. They had sold over 100 of these phones to the city of Nampa at over $1,000 a piece, right? So the city spent $100,000 on these phones that were largely unnecessary rather than spending $10,000 like a private business chose to do. And things like that, people in the community find out about, they hear about, right? In my case, I learned about it from the company. And I think that a lot of people become disenfranchised with government agencies when they're wasteful with their spending. And that's a relatively small example. But when we talk about being prudent, and, I appreciate your work as the Canyon County Clerk, and taking that view that we have to be responsible even for the widow's mite, right? Like every single penny needs to be accounted for. Every single penny needs to be spent and invested in a prudent way. Are we making the best decisions with our money? Because from, I think, most citizens' perspectives, they feel like government entities always have their hand out. They're always wanting to tax. They're always wanting to levy. They're always wanting to bond. They're always wanting more. And the people in the community don't feel like those funds are being used in a prudent way.
Yeah.
I guess with your work as a Canyon County Clerk, and what would you say about that, and what would be your stance on using funds in a prudent manner in your role as mayor?
You know, we need to maintain public trust, and you have to show that we're good stewards with what's entrusted to us. Some of the things you alluded to, whether bond or levies, they might be necessary. And sometimes a bond and levy might get passed because the public doesn't necessarily disagree with the premise of the opposition, but they might distrust the people that the money is going to, because they might think, we don't think you've been handling our money well to begin with. Why would we give you more money to fund this project? And so the last thing I would want is distrust in the way we steward money to be the reason why a legitimate project that, if there was trust, would probably get passed, fail.
Yeah.
And our community suffer. And so it really starts with stewardship and trust and transparency. And so we absolutely need to be good stewards with our community. I have another thought. There are some communities that have a citizen review committee on the budget just as a preliminary. It's almost sort of an ad hoc.
Yeah.
I don't know, I know Elon and Trump kind of had their falling away, and then they were back together at the Kirk memorial. But the Doge stuff, whether you call it Doge or the way you elaborated it, there's this abiding principle of efficiency and stewardship. That's like an eternal, permanent truth. It's not some
100%
thing. And so it's absolutely important that we show that we are trustworthy and that we are stewarding the dollars well. Some of the things that we might bring to the citizens so that they can make a decision, it might mean, I don't want to say here that I'm imposing a tax increase, but if people say that they don't like traffic, and we know scientifically we can quantify it through our engineers, if we make this improvement, your 18-minute commute might be a 14-minute commute.
Yep.
But it's going to cost this much money. And you say 4 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 20 minutes, an hour every 3 weeks. You do the math every year. Are you willing to pay $100 a year to get back 2 days of your life or whatever?
And I think that most people would, if they really understood the value proposition behind it.
Yes. We have to trust that we're competent.
Yep.
And that it's just not pie in the sky,
yep,
abstract thinking. So I want to bring data-driven governance at the city level to be able to propose the trade-offs, to quantify it, to have the trust of people and say, okay, I trust you and I'm willing to support this. But if they don't trust you, it's like, that's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Or, you the last 3 promises didn't come through. Why would I, fool me once, fool me twice. I'm not going to. So once you lose trust, it's really hard to survive in the business of public sector. You usually get voted out because trust is the currency of legitimacy and local governance. And so there may be projects where it's like, are you willing to pay a little bit more to improve marketplace traffic patterns? Are you willing to reroute the traffic around Library Square?
Yeah.
Some of those things
which are both big issues, right? They're both big issues.
Capacity.
Yeah.
And I think the public may be willing to do, a 2-year temporary levy. Just are you willing to trust us for 2 years?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, you kind of have an exit after the 2 years and be like, yep, I'm not going to trust you again on anything else. But if it works, they're like, what's next?
Yep.
Feed me more. Right? It's like actually get a community that have buy-in to say, we're willing to pay a little extra in taxes because we know it's not so much just paying the extra in taxes. I know some people are stretched thin, but it's what value are you generating with it?
Well,
if we could quantify what the value is, and people are like, we're getting a good deal and we trust you.
Yep. Well, I think a few cities that have done a good job of this, and I know there's differences in state constitutions, but for example, if you take Utah, right? If you go anywhere in the Salt Lake Valley, and part of their goal in their infrastructure system is that they wanted no one to be more than 7 minutes away from a interstate on or off ramp. And you can go pretty much anywhere in the Salt Lake Valley in 25 minutes because you can get on and off a freeway anywhere, even though they would have had higher upfront costs in investing in that infrastructure. And a lot of that came prior to the 2002 Olympics, but a lot of it's come since then as well. But you look at what property values have done in Utah, you look at all the business that's come there, you look at the job creation, you look at all the affluency that has come to Salt Lake City and to Utah, largely because of good policies and good decisions that have been made in investment in infrastructure. I know that's a larger scale example, but similar things can be said in Phoenix and their investments in infrastructure, Denver, a lot of the same things. You see these massive economic growths that happen when positive investments are made in infrastructure, right? And so, policy really does make a big difference with the feel of a community, the way that you attract people to want to live there, the way that life feels. I don't think that anyone that lives here currently would say, oh, hey, we don't have a traffic problem in Boise, Idaho, or in the Treasure Valley, right? In Nampa, Idaho. Like, we clearly do. We have a traffic problem.
And it's only getting worse.
And it's only getting worse. And it will make it less attractive for people to want to live here, right? It took me an hour and 26 minutes to get here this morning, right? And I live 14 miles away. And that's a problem, right? Like, my kids go to school. I have a daughter that goes to East Valley Middle School, a son that goes to Columbia High School. It took us almost a half an hour to get to East Valley Middle School this morning because of the traffic, right? We live 3.5 miles away from Columbia High School. We're like just under 5 miles away, 4.5 miles away. And it took us almost 45 minutes, right?
And I call that a time tax.
It is. It 100% is. And why is that? And so, my engineer brain, I start thinking like, okay, well, why is this the issue? Well, part of it's the issue because we had poor planning, a long time before. We have a high school and 2 middle schools all on the same road, on Greenhurst Road, right? We have way too highly dense development in that area. And so it adds way too much traffic without a way to get other places. And then you look at the development along Happy Valley Road, and multiple roundabouts were put in there, but they're all single lane roundabouts. And so rather than them being 2-lane roundabouts, I think that part of good decisions being made, or maybe like we'll call it like prudence in use of funds, is that you make decisions that are in the best interest for the community long term, right? To go back in and go redo those roundabouts and make them 2-lane roundabouts now would have a substantial cost to it. Had that just been done at the time, the incremental difference in the cost would have been minimal to have made those 2-lane roundabouts at the time, right? But as a result, it makes it more difficult for people to get through that way. It makes it less attractive for people to want to live there, right? It takes longer for people to get to the interstate or get to where they're going. And so, through policy and through decisions that are made, things that are put forward from the staff, and even though city staffs are not elected officials, right? They're hired staff. I think that the people that you have and that you surround yourself with play a massive role that goes on behind the scenes that maybe a lot of people don't always see.
No, you bring up a good point. I think city council needs to make these appropriation decisions, and sometimes you do a pay as you go, and we'll deal with it again in 5 years. But then the cost, the right of way acquisition just went up, maybe double.
Yeah,
the cost construction went up. Is double digit. It's higher than what our budget can go up year over year. Yep. So you're seeing the cost of these projects are going up exponentially, and that's an example where it might have cost a little bit extra then.
Yeah.
But if you do a 10-year or a 30-year pro forma review, we're saving money over 10 years or over 20 years or over 30 years. So sometimes in order to save a penny today, we might have to pay $1 tomorrow.
Exactly. It would have cost another $100,000 to make those roundabouts, 2-lane roundabouts. And now it's going to cost a couple $1 million to make them 2-lane roundabouts, right?
Part of data-driven decision-making, what I hope to do is have our staff create visual spreadsheets or infographics that can simplify these concepts so that city council, the 6 members of the city council, can look, and as much as we don't want to spend a penny more than we have to.
Yeah.
The mentality might be, what is the cost of saving that penny? It might be $1 2 years from now. And so what is the best decision from that perspective? It might be to have the moral courage at times.
Yes.
And to quantify to the public, yes, I know we spent a little bit extra, but believe me, it'll pay for itself.
This makes our community better after, yes.
Because it's going to cost a lot more. Or you have this sort of what I call traffic a time tax that doesn't show up on your tax bill.
Yes.
But it shows up in your daily commute. So if we're not dealing with these things, we're extracting time, aggravation, from our citizens on the roads by spending more and more time on the roads. It's not a good quality of life. Most people don't, when we talk about what are we on earth for, it's not to sit in traffic. So, traffic is sort of this necessary aspect of trying to get from point A to B. And certainly the more people that move in here, if we're not maintaining infrastructure, what we're doing is we are imposing a time tax on people. It doesn't show up on the tax bill, but it shows up in your daily commute.
And the more density of development that we put in, the worse that's going to get, right? And so I think that those two things go hand in hand, that city planners and people in government are virtually always advocating for, hey, we need more density, we need more density, we need more density. And part of the reason for that is they advocate, in my view, that they advocate for a density of services and having things and walkability and other things like that. The reality is in Idaho is not a walkability type of culture, right? Like people don't walk everywhere in their life, people drive. And so because of that, I think that those concepts need to be included in the way that we plan and the way that we view things, right? Like virtually no one here lives, works, and eats in a 1 or 2 square block, right? Like there may be a small portion in downtown, but by and large, that is not the way that the community is set up here. And that's not what is viable for most people. And so the fallacy that density is what's best for communities, I think, is really important that be disproven. I think that you've done a good job with showing through taking an objective approach and a very analytical approach to identifying and maybe kind of pushing back against some of that narrative. If you want to kind of share what your thoughts and what you found that way.
Yeah, I think you alluded to it earlier, especially when we talk about traffic. And you also, I think, were fair to mention that I think there is a vision of density that it can create some positive outcomes or feed some positive outcomes. But if you cherry pick the narrative, it tells an incomplete story.
Yeah.
And so what I've tried to share when you look at a lot of, so for example, if the planners are saying, hey, density is good because, and I'll concede it makes sense from hey, extending our water line, we extended a mile and you got more users, they're thinking from an ROI, from a utility fee piece of infrastructure ROI. Now,
in a vacuum,
our ROI on extending a water line is not the full story, though, right?
Yes.
Affecting quality of life. And so, but if your discipline is just what's the highest ROI on running infrastructure,
water line,
we're going to say, oh, low density makes no sense because why would we extend a mile of line just to have a few users? That's going to be backwards. Well, the big picture is how many kids are going to be going to school? Is the school district already overcrowded where the density is occurring? What's the effect on calls for service from police? So higher density means you need to hire more police, and theoretically the tax base is growing to hire those more police. And if you pack them in, the theory is they're not having to drive as far away for dispatching calls. If you have, say, in some cases, lower density, let's say higher end homes, they might be paying double, triple the taxes of a small starter home. Mm-hmm. But not requiring double or triple the services when it comes to police or school or those other things. So I think...
And the data is very clear on that, right? Yeah.
The whole picture. I think the whole picture needs to be accounted for. And I'll just be honest that let the data, be objective, tell the story. We need to tell the whole story.
Yep.
But density, if you're packing more people into a square mile, what's that going to do in concentrating the traffic on that infrastructure? That might mean their commute goes from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. So that you're taking away 10 minutes of their day every day now. So that becomes more like the hidden price to pay. And so while it makes sense from the water line, we're cheered because we got our ROI on the water line. If the citizens are saying my quality of life doesn't feel much improved, and so you just can't get narrowly focused on that. And while it is true that there's also, well, the more we pack people into a square mile, the more the tax base goes up. Well, the other side of the story is what is the cost of services? Mm-hmm. So you can't just look at the revenue side. You're a business guy. You realize you got to look at both sides of a balance sheet.
Yeah.
You can't just look at one side of a balance sheet and say, hey, our revenue is up. Well, if the cost of providing goods goes up, even higher than what the revenue is, then maybe that doesn't make as much sense. So just packing density and saying that's the highest ROI from a revenue generation. Well, right now, ag land that, let's say, is not housing,
Yep.
they contribute very little. So someone could look at that and say, well, they contribute a lot in economic impact, but just direct taxation,
Yes.
it's a very small thing. They require very little by way of services.
Yeah.
Right. So they're net positive. And so this becomes sort of almost like a counterintuitive exercise.
Yeah.
Some people might look at the ag land and say, man, we could pack a bunch of stuff on that, and we're smart business people, we're going to drive up our revenue. It's like, have you even looked at the other side of what the cost of providing the services are? And until you've done that exercise, don't be standing and saying.
And to this point, the city has not, right? Like, and to this point, the city hasn't. And that's been one of my biggest criticisms of the current administration, is that they really have not done that. And to advocate that it is good from a revenue perspective is only half of the picture.
It is only half the picture. You can't declare yourself becoming wealthier. I mean, it's like someone taking a job for maybe $2 more an hour, but they're going to have to drive an hour longer every day,
Yes.
road trip. They might have to pay an extra $300 in benefits. And if they didn't count the full cost,
Yep.
and they just took that job and they're celebrating, hey, dear, I'm going to take a job and we're going to be wealthier.
Yeah. I moved to we had to move to a new city where the cost of housing and everything else is double, and I'm making $5,000 more a year. You're really not better off.
You're not better off. And then if you put all those cost inputs into the equation, and that you might have less in your paycheck or less in the bank after the end of the month, and then you're scratching your head saying, well, wait a minute, I thought we were making ourselves wealthier. And it's like, yeah, your
Revenue generation, your tax basis is bigger.
but the cost of that job, you actually went backwards. And so sometimes even at Nampa, we would maybe, try to retain good employees who might want to leap for $1 an hour or $2 more. It's like, have you counted the full cost? And sometimes they're like, I just assumed the health benefits would be the same, or I thought traffic was just the minimal cost. I mean, oh, did you crunch the numbers?
Yeah.
You could do an average. This is how many miles per gallon. This is what the cost of gas is. Oh, did you consider what wear and tear is?
Yeah.
Like your oil changes are going to be more frequent now, and all of those other things. And then you got people going, oh, you saved me. Like I thought I was better off, and I'm actually would be worse off. So, we do this in our everyday finances.
Yes.
It's sort of an intuitive thing. So I think it's important as a city, when we talk about whether density is making us wealthier, that we're at least honest at looking at the whole picture. And looking at the whole picture, even though we're not responsible for providing school services, the school district lives with our land use decisions, we need to be mindful of the impact on school districts. Because if you grow beyond capacity, the only way right now that the school district can build a new school to add capacity is to ask for a bond on everyone else. And so, and that does become a challenge for some people. So sometimes the density might push you beyond a threshold where now you're asking for a bond for the whole community. So again, it becomes almost this hidden transfer of the cost of that growth increment that's passed on to everyone else, where if you didn't go as dense, possibly, if you've looked at what those thresholds were, whether it's wastewater capacity, school capacity. So as you know, sort of major costly pieces of infrastructure. And once you go past that, it triggers the need to then do a whole new build out and then kind of reset. And those are costly enterprises to hit those thresholds. And so I think we need to count the cost of, measure all of it. So I think to your question, we need to measure everything.
Yep.
We need to be open and candid. And I want it to be scrutinized by people like you and others in the business sector and, in the private sector, put eyeballs on this and then go before city council and have our staff start to have a mentality that's a little more holistic.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's really easy to just get siloed. And think, well, this is a win from my narrow view, but it might not be a win when you look at the big picture. So I feel the responsibility as mayor to try to cultivate that big picture analysis on the cost.
Well, and to quote Mitt Romney on a quote that he gave while he was visiting here in Boise at an event that I went to, he said, governments are really good at acquiring data. Governments are not good at using data. And, like we acquire all kinds of data, but yet using that, and governments do not think enough, leaders in government or staff in government do not think enough of what is the impact on the citizens who live in this community. Does this impact me so that I would want to live here, for example, right? Like you take out by Marketplace, and the I-84 interchange out there. Like, we just approved another 1,500 unit complex out in that area, right? Like, anyone that has driven that, the traffic is terrible.
Mhm.
People will consciously, my family included, make decisions to go drive to Meridian, to go to Shields, or to go to other businesses off of 10 Mile because it's faster to get there than it is to get somewhere that's 3 or 4 miles away because the traffic is so bad, right?
That's a problem.
And that's a problem, right? Like, that's a problem for our community.
If someone living in Nampa, if the time proposition to drive to Marketplace and back is at a point now, the whole case for packing density and having amenities closer is it's to avoid those out routes. And so I think the theorists would say we're saving traffic by doing that.
Packing things in depth.
But if it becomes so miserable and the time commitment is so high that it actually makes more sense for you to jump on the interstate and go to Meridian,
Yep,
and go to Shields and go back, and it's less time than it would be to fight through the traffic, let's say getting to Costco or Marketplace.
Yep.
We got a problem.
Yes.
I mean, we got a problem.
And we continue to add to it, right? And we continue to, approve more developments. And it's as though the administration and the city council, or some members of the city council, have had the view that it is though we have to approve every project that comes before us, right? The default answer is that we're going to approve this project unless there's some sort of egregious reason why we should not. And my view is much the opposite, where I would say we scrutinize every project, and the answer is no. The default answer is no, unless this project adds in a beneficial way to our long-term view of what we want the city to become. And so I don't think that violates land users' rights. I think that we can have a very strict criteria of what we want the city to be. And I think upholding that and sharing that vision over and over and over again, and where you have staff and other people aligned with that we do not approve projects unless the projects add to the value of our community, because we're creating a community where people want to live. Because what ends up happening is if you just approve every project or near it, and it's like, oh, go make some minor modifications and then bring it back and then we'll approve it. If that is the sentiment, then what ends up happening is that you get projects like this that have been developed over and over and over again, and it creates such great density. I think of there's this small clip that I'd seen and then saw it on the series, 1923. It's a Yellowstone spinoff. I've seen the series. And these people in the year 1923 are walking through a small town in Montana. There's an appliance salesman there trying to sell refrigerators, washing machines, other things like that, right? And there's this there's this little, back and forth exchange between them. They said, well, why would we need this refrigerator? Why would we need this washing machine? It's like, oh, well, it runs on electricity. And so you just plug it in and it keeps the food cool. You don't have to go walk it out to your cellar. It washes your clothes for you. You don't have to do it. It's like, well, how does it work? Well, it runs on electricity. Okay, well, how do you get electricity? Well, you have to pay for it. And it's like, so then what do we do this? Well, this will buy you back so much more of your time. Well, it's like, well, if we have to pay for this, then we're going to have to be working more. It's like, well, it'll buy you more free time. But it's like, the premise basically being that the cost, the value, the convenience it would bring to them would end up adding more, labor to their burden. And I often think the same thing, right? I drive through some of these rural areas, and the premise from, I think, some in city planning and zoning or administration or even on city councils is, hey, these people have to drive too far to get to a grocery store. These people have to drive too far to get to city services. And so they need them closer. So we are going to propose more dense housing in this area. It's like, no, like, I'm good driving 10 minutes to get to a grocery store. That doesn't bother me. Oh no, you need it packed in closer. So everything gets packed in closer. Well, guess what? Now you live a mile away, but it still takes you 10 minutes to get there.
Yeah, I think that last point, I don't disagree with the conceptual proposition that to build something closer to you might spare you a trip. However, that's generally not going to happen unless there's enough density. Those people are not in the business to just serve a few people who might trickle through the door, right? So you're trying to, in a concurrent fashion, approve density and the commercial. Say, see, we're getting you the commercial you want by giving you but we have to accept the density. Now, let's say everything is built out And the whole proposition was, this is going to improve your quality of life and give you quicker, easier access to the local, more local commercial amenities.
Yeah.
If it becomes a congestion nightmare, however, this is where people get frustrated. I live closer and it takes me just as long in time to drive to the thing that's closer to fight for a parking spot and drive back than it did when we were just a rural community and I drove into town.
Marketplace is 5 miles from my house. I would rather drive to Meridian than drive to Marketplace.
Maybe just spending a little more gas and driving longer. I think most people are measuring their lives kind of in increments of time.
Yeah.
And it, where people are going to get really upset is if you do this whole proposition saying, listen, this is improving quality of life, you'll be happier. And now you're concentrating more inbound traffic from people who don't even live necessarily in the most immediately approximate area. Now you have locals fighting. Their traffic could actually get worse, where the time proposition's worse. And you're telling people, but we're wealthier now and we brought you an amenity. And it's like to your point, I was good just the way it was.
Yep.
Like, you came in with this grand plan to do me a favor, and honestly, like, things were okay. So we just need to at least be honest and candid with the measurables. And
in listening to the citizens and what the citizens want, right? And I think that every politician has ever run has run in saying that one of their core values is integrity, right? And it's, oh, hey, we believe in integrity and I believe in integrity and this is important to me. And everyone says it, but very few people do it. And integrity, I think in most cases where it gets compromised is by sharing all of the facts and not just, saying, hey, in this one way, this is better for us. In all these other ways, it's not. So we're just going to choose to omit information, or we're not going to share things, or we're going to twist the way that something is portrayed so that it looks right. And so that it appears this way so that we'll get people more on board with it. Or I know I just listened to 250 people stand up and be in opposition to this. I know that there's all these strong reasons for it, but I have some sort of other reason that I'm not telling you that is the reason why I want to have this thing happen. And to me, that's not integrity. And so I think that's what people yearn for in leaders and in elected officials, is that they want people who genuinely share what all the facts are, that they don't omit facts, that they don't twist things to portray them a certain way that fits, their agenda, that if they're elected by the people based on a certain platform, that platform is what they carry, throughout the time that they're in office. And if people decide that they don't like that platform, if people say, hey, you know what, I really don't agree with Rick on these things, then they vote another way. Yeah. But if this is what someone runs on and this is what people believe in and this is what people vote for, that should be what people then expect.
Absolutely. The good, the bad, the ugly. I'm committed to being transparent. In my public administration program, there's a class on, statistics, and there's a lot of discussion in that class on the ethics of how to utilize statistics. So
numbers never lie, but they never tell the whole truth. Yeah.
But you can pick and choose what numbers to give an impression, and that's a very unethical exercise. Yeah. And I know that there's a great temptation for people in office to want to be liked and to, always spin things in the positive.
Yep.
And no one wants to spin things unnecessarily in the negative. But I think I'm trusting that the people of Nampa are discerning enough. And, people in the public sector, we can be candid. And if I get voted out of office by just being open and honest about things, and even if it's like, what, we did make a mistake on this.
My integrity is intact. That means a lot more.
Vulnerable and being humble is something that we
authentic. Yeah.
I mean, it's very hard to find our leaders admit, I made a mistake here.
Yeah.
But I did get this right. And it's like, that's fair. You did get that right.
I'm very guarded and I'm very political, rather than being authentic.
Got a mistake in the future. And you know what? I could throw down more with someone, I'm just speaking for myself, who's just very candid and honest.
Yeah.
Like, we're all going to make mistakes. Like, and we're going to have regrets and be like, I maybe made that decision wrong. But we're almost, I think people are trained to not admit it because it's a show of weakness.
100%.
And it's, I think the only way we get better and the way we build trust with our people is to admit, what? I wish I could have a mulligan on that.
Yeah.
But I can't. And I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
how often do we hear public service?
You don't. They blame it on someone else, or they twist it to be some other ways. Well, and I think that,
I'm sorry, I got something wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Well, and I think that governments can learn a lot from private businesses in a lot of ways. One of the things I have a lot of respect for Jeff Bezos. I don't agree with him on everything, but I do have respect for him and what he's built in Amazon. And one of the things that he said, one of his key pillars of how they built Amazon the way that it is they said that we wanted to make Amazon the most customer-centric company on the planet. And if everything that we did had our customer in mind, we were never going to go wrong. We'd make some decisions. We'd have some things that would flop. The Kindle flopped. Other things that we had, we thought were going to be a success flopped. But we kept in mind the entire time the customer's experience.
Yeah.
If we focused on giving the customers the best possible experience, we're the most customer-centric company in the world, that good things were going to happen. And I think the same thing could hold true, right? Like if we focus on, we want to be the most customer-centric community that there is, right? We want to be the most citizen-centric community that there is. I think that people respond to that positively. And I think that the input that you'll get, I think that the way that people will follow you, I think that the way that people will want to come to the community, I think will be overwhelming, because communities generally don't do that well, right? Leaders, elected officials generally don't do a good job of that they get elected and they think, people elected me because of how great I am and my decision-making ability and my wisdom and my charisma or whatever. And they elected me and this is the decision that I want. So even if everyone else is telling me it's not what they want, it's what I want, and the people elected me. Therefore, what I want is then going to prevail.
Yeah. No,
and I don't think that's a recipe for success.
Well said. I appreciate the Bezos illustration. Yeah. You aim high and more times than not, you hit the target.
Yeah.
It's not, and so I want to aim high for the city of Nampa. And some people, I don't intend that to be pie in the sky, or I'm just trying to pull at people's emotions. Like, let's see, if you're ready for mayor, you're just saying, I just want to just kind of keep the status quo and it's good enough. It's like, let's go aspire to be the best city and work hard at it.
Yeah.
If we fall short, at least we can have the satisfaction, look in the mirror saying, at least we're aspiring high. We're not going to accept, we're going to, those are the lessons my coaches taught me.
Yeah.
The outcome of the game, is going to determine on a lot of factors, but the one thing you can control is do your best.
Yep.
Do your best and put in 100% effort and don't go into the game defeated. Don't have a defeated mentality when you start the game. You can't. That was one of probably the most powerful lessons that the coaches teaches, is like, you could just sometimes look at the bench of 2 teams of 4, you already know who's going to win or lose. Just
100%.
Look at it. And while it is true that maybe a team is less talented and more times than not, you're probably going to lose against that team, one powerful lesson is we're not going to go into this game thinking we've already lost. We can't. And because you're going to take that into life and just think, I'm just going to be a loser in life. And it, it's going to become almost a self-fulfilling prophecy if you just settle for low expectations. And so the city of Nampa has great potential, and the potential resides in people like you and everyone who lives in our community. And my hope is to try to inspire the entrepreneurial spirit of our community, the generosity, the faith-driven generosity, the family-focused values of our community, to create the best city to live and raise a family. So
I love that. And one other thing is, you were just saying that came to my mind. I heard a quote a little while back that said that everyone's family at some point was broke and dysfunctional.
Yep.
And every family that you ever see that is a healthy, strong, thriving family, right? Every individual that you see who has eventually made it and become successful and been able to help other people and give back did not come from that background. Somewhere in their family that changed. And I think that exact same thing could be said of any community. Every community was at one time broke and dysfunctional, right? Every community wasn't always thriving and, being the best that they could be. And how did that change? Like, who was the person, who was the leader, who was the one that came along and changed that family's trajectory? Who was the one that said, yeah, I came from a dysfunctional family, but a dysfunctional family is not going to come from me. And they changed the course and the way that they lived their life, and great things came from it. And I think that, the same thing is true with you. I think that as a leader, you can have a profound impact on things that happen in the city, and that, time can be measured in the city of Nampa from the time before Rick Hogaboam was the mayor to the time after he was the mayor, and enacting powerful changes. And, the world needs strong leaders more than it needs anything else. And the more strong leaders step up and do difficult things and do things that are inconvenient for them, but that are in the best interest of those around them, and those people make a profound impact on lots of people for a very long time. Last question really quickly, just because I know this is a hot topic, and I don't think that we could have this without even discussing it. The Ford Idaho Center. It's a hot topic in Nampa right now. I don't want to take a ton of time on it, but really quickly, just so people that may not have previously heard your stance on this, I want to give you a platform to be able to share your thoughts.
Let me try to keep this concise. It was built using a mechanism called urban renewal years ago, which means it was funded through increment of value, tax-based creation because of infrastructure that was run out there. So when that sunsets, the asset gets handed over to the city. What also gets handed over to the city is that tax base. That increment is now it's been part of the city's tax base. I think what the city's staring at is future capital renewal. Some of it is deferred maintenance. I know people have said $25 million deferred maintenance, and I don't think that's accurate, because it's not $25 million of existing, like as if you're behind right now.
I agree.
So most of that $25 is future looking. It's just anticipated capital renewal. There's several $1 million of existing maintenance that needs to occur on that. The city, as far as I can tell, is looking at all these mounting needs and priorities, and just thinking, whoa, that's going to cost a lot of money to do all this stuff. And it's as far as I could tell, from the narrative that's been shared, is CWI was approached about whether or not they would be interested in possibly assuming the responsibility on the premise that CWI has some other funding mechanisms. Yeah. I think the challenge with this, I think that press release kind of went out in July with a potential date of August to make a decision. What I've been hearing from the community, by and large, is, one, I didn't know there was a problem.
Yeah.
This was sort of a solution for a problem that
we didn't know we had.
And this doesn't feel like the normal way the city has normally gone about workshopping things through a process of elimination, of whiteboarding and working way down. It sort of feels sort of rushed. And I know from the city's perspective, it's like, no, this isn't rushed. We don't have to do this. But then you have some saying, well, no, we kind of are in a hurry because there's competition coming in the outdoor auditorium business, and we got to hurry up or we're going to lose OVG as the venue manager, or we're going to lose our strategic competitive advantage as being the venue in the region. But now you're adding to the narrative, right? All these things get added. So the longer the conversation goes, okay, what is the $25 billion? Who came up with that? Can we look at that report? And so citizens asking,
is this like the $100,000 phone bill, or is there actually stuff there? Yeah.
So really, I think there's like this progressive rollout, and I think the city has shared information over time in a concentrated period of time. And while they've dedicated a lot of public, they've had several meetings and town hall meetings and stuff. It's not so much the hours in a concentrated period of time that this should be measured by. I think it's more the proposition to the community. We have a challenge, and to try to assess, one, what are other potential solutions, and other potential solutions might not work, but then the public would have the insight of seeing that through a process of elimination, some good ideas are coming off the board.
Yes,
because they don't work. And then if you're going to convey an asset, and we could debate what it's worth, and a lot of people, I don't want to get into what is it worth. But if you're going to convey or give away a significant public asset, we saw the federal government run into kind of a chainsaw, because one of Trump's priorities was, you ask people, do you like the Federal Bureau of Land Management handling our federal lands? Do you think they do a good job? Overwhelmingly, people are going to say no. Therefore, should we just go ahead and off all the public lands? You saw also a lot of people say no.
Yeah.
So you're kind of at the stance of, well, we don't like kind of the current arrangement, but then just don't give it away or sell it either. And so what that means is there's going to be some nuance that needs to be sought after. And clearly you can just be stuck in paralysis and say, well, they don't want to do this, they don't want to do this, so we'll just throw our hands in the air. Well, we need more creative thinking on this. I think that there's a lot of potential around that footprint for potential maintaining all of the commitments.
Yeah.
And and to have additional investment that doesn't detract but actually enhances on that. So there's been some talk about that, re-explore the contract with the venue manager. So when we say it's not making money, the venue manager is making money. The people who are serving us hot dogs and sodas at the events, they're making money. So everyone, the food bev is making money, the venue is making money. So I think you need to re-explore the contract and what should go to the city off the top, off the bottom, in between. Should part of the parking ticket go into a dedicated capital renewal fund? Now, part of the challenge is we're up against the 8 ball right now because we don't know why I just should have been doing this 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. And now we're staring at a future of trying to play a little bit of catch up with these mounting needs in the future. So it's not an easy, issue to work through. I think I would go through it probably with a methodical approach of having more time. Start with the proposition. We have some mounting concerns and we need public input. And I would have incorporated it even into the city survey right now. The city does a survey every year, and unless they had a lot of people in recent days, I think they're saying that the input on this survey is probably one of the lowest that they've had in the prior years, because for the most part, the questions are pretty much the same.
And it seems like the sentiment from leaders in a lot of cases, like, oh, see, they didn't input, therefore they're just trusting me to make the decision, so I'm going to make whatever decision I think is best, right?
But I think you need
rather than who's seen the survey. How are you getting that out to people? Do people actually know that that's the case? Oh, hey, we sent out some emails, or it was, posted in the newspaper, or was on the city website. Like, well, how many people go to the city website?
Yeah, and I think that they do a good job trying to promote the survey, but the participation level being lower, I think that suggests to me that there's a little bit of potential fatigue or cynicism, just survey fatigue. And it's like, well, I could take 15 minutes answering all these questions. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
So I think, but what could have been incorporated maybe in an intentional survey is questions surrounding maybe even a survey that was focused just around the Ford Idaho Center. Some people might be like, I'm okay with spending $1 million a year to underwrite it. Because there's some people who are like, oh no, the public's going to, they hate this. They don't want us. And it's like, I don't know. I talk to some people and they're like, we levy some money to underwrite the fair. And I don't see people outraged over the fact that we underwrite the fair.
Yeah.
So, the auditorium district was a new thing that was voted on and approved, and there's revenue that's going to be coming in. Now they're their own decision-making body, but I feel like they should be brought to the table and hear what are your long-term goals on enhancing. And everyone's in it together, whether it's the rodeo, the venue, the hospitalities.
Well, and the reality is that the Idaho Center brings a lot of industry to Nampa, right? Like, there's a saying in business that the first thing you got to worry about is getting sales. Everything else is business management. And the reality is, like, you have sales with the Idaho Center, right? That place is packed all of the time. Like, you are hard pressed to find anyone that lives in this valley that doesn't go to events at the Idaho Center. Like, they do.
Yeah, they've been breaking records.
Yeah. And their new management company has been doing a great job. And I mean, I've been to more shows there. They've reached out to us to be a sponsor. So I've had meetings with them and lunches with them. And, they've done a great job reaching out to the community and getting businesses involved. I think that they're doing a great job there. And so I think that the Idaho Center has a lot of positive things happening. And really the biggest thing you want is full events, right? So you have a lot of events that are there, which they have record numbers of events that they're holding, and they're getting record attendance at all these events. So those are all great things. Now it just becomes, okay, how do you manage this, right? If your company is bringing in $100 million a year in sales and you're telling me you can't manage the company to make it profitable, that's a management issue. And, so I think that largely with the Idaho Center, whatever ends up being the right decision, and I think that, like you said, there's so many factors that go into this, but I think that taking a creative approach, being willing to evaluate a lot of different options, I do think a lot of people have been rubbed the wrong way by just saying, we didn't know this was a problem. Now all of a sudden, here's our one and only solution, and either you sign on to this or, life's going to be terrible because all these bad things are going to happen. I don't think that that's true, and I think that other venues have popped up in the area. You obviously have Extra Mile Arena at Boise State. You have other things in the area, and the Idaho Center is more popular than it's ever been. So I don't really buy into the narrative that, okay, overnight, if we don't do this, then, it's going to turn into, like the Silver Dome in Detroit, where it's just going to be abandoned and there's nothing there. Yeah. I don't think that that's a threat at all. I think that we have a great asset in the Idaho Center that brings a lot of people to the community, brings a lot of value to the community. And I think as long as it's approached in a way of taking suggestions from a lot of different people, being willing to listen, and taking time in making the correct decision, not trying to rush into a decision, I'm confident that something positive will be able to come out of this.
Yeah,
So.
agreed. The bigger the decision, sometimes you got
The more time and consideration generally need to be given to it. Yeah.
Survive on trust as a public institution. As a
Yep.
private institution, you might have to answer to stakeholders and all that. So from a private sector, agility and rapid adjustments. But when you're dealing with a public sector entity and you're dealing with an asset, that's a city asset, that's a taxpayer asset. The bigger the deal,
time and consideration need to be given.
Consideration, and even if you arrived at this as the final best decision, and it went through a process where the public could at least see through a process of elimination, and maybe not starting with here's the solution, but if you have an idea and you have 3 minutes to give your idea, well, we're not hearing compelling ideas. The public saying this doesn't really feel like this was a good faith invitation for public input. You pretty much just said this is what we're considering doing, but you have a few minutes to give us ideas. When the information has progressively gotten out, and then things get added to the narrative a little bit. Well, it's because of competition or this or that.
Sure.
Can we scrutinize the 25 million? And at that point, it's like it feels like there's this anxiety, the decision-making anxiety. There's so much at stake that the public just feels like,
find yourself getting booed off stage.
Yeah. So I think that, the challenge, I think the lesson learned from this and any big decision is, start with letting the community know, hey, we're going to explore what the future long-term viability is of the Fort Idaho Center. And we're inviting people to attend some workshops, and we're going to talk about how it got here, where we're at. We're going to talk about there are some big bills coming in the future. This might also be an opportunity. Do we just keep doing status quo? Do we just keep fixing it in its current state? Are there ways to actually enhance it?
Yeah.
If we're going to spend money, maybe we do it right. It goes back to that discussion. Maybe you spend a penny more and you save $1 tomorrow. How do we breathe another 30 to 50 years into that venue and have high expectations?
Yep.
Have high expectations. I want to be reasonable. I don't want to have pie in the sky and then bankrupt the city, of course, with outrageous decisions. But I trust that if you go through a process that's deliberative and vetted and you solicit public input, that the end product is going to be a good product. The decision is going to have public trust.
So well put. And I think that if you would have come to someone living in Nampa, Idaho in 1992 or 1993, 1994, before the Idaho Center was ever conceived and built, if you would have said, hey, we're going to have a venue here that is going to bring hundreds of thousands of attendees in every single year. It's going to house dozens of concerts, tons of events, all these different things. There's going to be hotels, there's going to be restaurants, there's going to be, the biggest car dealership concentration anywhere in the state of Idaho, and that this is all going to take place right here in Nampa, Idaho. Someone would have thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
Right? But that's just the same thing of having a vision. That's what leadership is having a vision of the future that doesn't currently exist, and being able to convey that to enough people and being able to help will that into reality by recruiting other people that share a similar vision and are willing to help solve the problems that it's going to take to get there. So Rick, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Appreciate you. Look forward to the days ahead and what's going to come, and supporting you in this journey. So
thanks, Cam. You'll have to have me back on in a few months. I'll do it. We'll talk about how the campaign ended up. I'll either be Mayor Hogaboam or I'll still be Clerk Hogaboam.
Okay. Well, we'll do it. We'll get you booked again. So
right.
Thanks, Rick.